Once upon a time, there was a little village girl.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl,
The prettiest ever seen or known.
the prettiest,
Her mother loved her very much.
and her mother loved her.
Her grandmother was even fonder of her and had a little red hood made for the child.
Her grandmother had a little red hood made for the child.
The hood suited her so well that wherever she went, she was known by the name of Little Red Riding Hood.
The little girl was good known by the name of Little Red Riding Hood.
One day, after her mother had baked some cakes, she said to Little Red Riding Hood,
Her mother said to the Little Red Riding Hood,
"Your grandmother is ill. Go visit her to see how she is doing. Take a cake and this little jar of butter."
Your grandmother is ill. Go visit her. Take a cake and this little jar of water.
Little Red Riding Hood started off without delay towards the village in which her grandmother lived.
Little Red Riding Hood went to the village which her grandmother lived.
On her way, she had to pass through part of a forest, and there she met that sly old fellow, Mr. Wolf.
On her way, she had to pass through the forest, and then she met Mr. Wolf.
The wolf felt that he would very much like to eat her on the spot, but was afraid to do so with woodcutters at hand in the forest.
The wolf wanted to eat her in the spot, but he was afraid of the cutters in the forest.
He asked her which way she was going. The poor child, not knowing
And he asked her where was she going.
how dangerous it is to stop and listen to a wolf, answered,
The little girl answered,
"I am going to see my grandmother. I am bringing a cake and a little jar of butter, which my mother sent her."
I'm going to see my grandmother, and I'm bringing some stuff which my grandmother sent to her.
"Does she live far from here?" asked the wolf.
Does she live far from here? Asked the wolf.
"Oh, yes," replied Little Red Riding Hood, "on the further side of the mill that you see down there. Hers is the first house in the village."
Oh yes, replied the little girl. Her house is the first house in the village.
"Well, I was thinking of going to visit her myself," rejoined the wolf. "So I will take this path, and you take the other, and we will see which of us gets there first."
I was thinking of going to visit her. I will take this path and you take the other, and we will see which one of us get first.
The wolf then began running off as fast as he could along the shorter way, which he had chosen.
The wolf started running as fast as possible through the shortest way, which he has chosen.
The little girl went by the longer way and amused herself by stopping to gather nuts, running after butterflies, and gathering all the flowers she could find.
The little girl was very slow and calm, seeing the flowers and with no hurries.
It did not take the wolf long to reach the grandmother's house. He knocked. Tap, tap.
The wolf reached the house very fast. He knocked the door. Tap tap.
"Who is there?"
Who is there?
It is your granddaughter, Little Red Riding Hood, answered the wolf, imitating the child's voice.
It's your grandmother, said the, it's your granddaughter, said Mr. Wolf, imitating the child's voice.
I brought a cake and a little jar of butter, which my mother sent you.
I brought a cake and a little liter of butter, which my mother sent you.
The good grandmother, who was ill in bed, called out, Pull the bobbin, and the latch will go up.
The grandmother said, pull the bobbin, and the latch will go up.
The wolf pulled the bobbin, and the door opened. He leaped onto the poor old woman and ate her in no time, for he had not eaten in 3 days.
The wolf pulled the bobbin and the door opened. So the wolf ate your grandmother as fast as I could because he had not eaten in 3 days.
He then shut the door again and laid himself down in the grandmother's bed to wait for Little Red Riding Hood.
Then she shut the door again and laid himself down in the bed to wait the little girl.
Presently, she came and knocked at the door. Tap tap.
Then she came and knocked at the door. Tap tap.
Who is there?
Who is there?
Little Red Riding Hood was frightened at first, hearing the wolf's gruff voice, but thinking that her grandmother had a cold, she answered,
The little girl was scared about the voice, but then she thought that it was her grandmother was ill of the throat.
It is your granddaughter, Little Red Riding Hood. I brought a cake and a little jar of butter which my mother sent you.
It's your granddaughter. I broke a cake and a little jar of butter which my mother sent you.
The wolf called out, this time with a softer voice. Pull the bobbin, and the latch will go up.
This time the wolf used a softer voice, and said, pull the bobbin and the latch will go up.
Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin, and the door opened.
The little Red Riding Hood opened the door.
When the wolf saw her come in, he hid himself under the covers and said to her, Put the cake and the little jar of butter in the cupboard and come into bed with me.
When the wolf saw her coming in, he went to bed and said to her, "Put put the stuff in the cupboard and come into bed with me."
Little Red Riding Hood went to the bedside. She was very much surprised to see how different her grandmother looked compared to when she was up and dressed.
Little Red Riding Hood went to bed, and she was surprised very much of how different was her grandmother.
Grandmother, she exclaimed, what long arms you have!
"Grandmother, what long arms you have," she said.
All the better to embrace you with, my little girl.
"It's to embrace you, my little girl."
Grandmother, what long legs you have!
"Grandmother, you have long legs."
All the better to run with you, child.
"It's to run with you, child."
Grandmother, what long ears you have!
"What long ears you have."
All the better to hear you, child.
"It's to hear you, child."